the Kennedy brothers, this is extremely important to understand, did not know about the assassination team, because the assassination team was not a CIA operation. It is not a government operation. It was done out through this complete back channel by Richard Nixon with Howard Hughes working together with Sam Giancana and Santo Trafficante. And so the Kennedy brothers didn't know anything about this. But when they continued the Operation Mongoose against Castro, Khrushchev became furious that he'd been lied to by this young president, and he began to put missiles, nuclear missiles, into Cuba. And as we all recall, the Cuban Missile Crisis came down in October of 1962, and we came to the very brink of thermonuclear war on that night in October. On October 28th, that evening, President Kennedy issued an ultimatum to Khrushchev saying that there was a line drawn in the sea that was a particular line of longitude, and that if in fact the Russian freighters carrying new missiles crossed that line, we would be technically in a state of war with the Soviet Union. And what happened is on that night, the freighter did in fact cross the line, and they had it tracked on real-time satellite by the NSA, and they saw that it crossed the line. The entire Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States military went into session, emergency session, and voted unanimously to go to nuclear first strike against the Soviet Union on that night of October 28th. That would have been the end of the world as we know it. And they voted unanimously to go to first strike because they'd run through this scenario 1,000 times and you can't blink. And, you know, and John Kennedy, when he was told this vote, he ordered them to stand down. And he said, "I will not be the man that does this." And he ordered the stand down of that attack. And he stood everybody down, went off DEFCON 3, and he said that he was going to, in fact, reach out to Castro. They were going to establish communications with them now. He sent a liaison to talk with Khrushchev, and they were going to try to disassemble the nuclear weapons to stop this thing, because he was confronted directly with the moment of the end of the human species. So what happened is Kennedy at that time gave the absolute order that all of the operations against Cuba were to stop. And he ordered the shutdown of all 5 of these paramilitary bases on Star Island and Swan Island and in the Everglades, and the 2 of them at Lake Pontchartrain, ordered them to be shut down. And the fact is, the anti-Castro Cubans that were manning those bases and conducting those paramilitary attacks refused to obey the president. And in fact, in January of 1963, now this is, remember the October Missile Crisis of 1962, and in November they're ordered to shut down those bases. They refused to do it. And then in January of 1963, that next month, it turns out that Frank Sturgis, who was one of the liaison, along with E. Howard Hunt, to the assassination group of these people, led an attack against Cuba from Star Island. And unknown to anybody until this point tonight, or this afternoon, it turns out that John Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy in January of 1963 ordered a full military strike against the island. And they sent in 50 United States Marshals in 6 helicopter gunships, fully armed with M16 rifles and full military brigade, went in and attacked the island and burnt out the camp of the island and arrested Sturgis and the other anti-Castro Cubans on that island, and threatened to prosecute them under the U.S. Neutrality Act for violating the Neutrality Act of attacking a country that the United States was not at war with. But then they released them and figured that that was a shot across the bow and that they all now knew that they were not to do this. The problem is that in February, a second attack was launched against Cuba from the base in the Everglades, this one under the supervision of E. Howard Hunt. So a second foray was organized by President Kennedy and Bobby as the Attorney General, and they sent in the helicopter gunships, burnt out the base in the Everglades, and arrested all of those men and prosecuted them under the Neutrality Act. It was that act itself that caused the members of the S-Force to say, "This is over. He's a traitor. He has lied to us. He said he would overthrow this government of Castro. He's now standing us down, and the S-Force at that moment resolved to kill the president. And when it was June, it was early June of 1960, when Bobby Kennedy was informed by William Sheridan, was informed by an FBI officer about the existence of the assassination team. And Bobby was furious about this, and he went and talked with John, and they both ordered the shutdown of the assassination team. Order it shut down. And what happened is on June 8th, this team was attempting one last foray to go in to try to assassinate Castro, pretending that they hadn't gotten the order from the president. And that's what happened on June 8th to June 10th. And that's what brought about that strange event on the night of June 10th, when William Pauley stated directly in the presence of Dick Billings, the Miami bureau chief of Time Life magazine, that they were going to kill the president. And they attempted to kill him in Miami. They were going to kill him in Miami. And they got word that it was too dangerous and the president canceled the trip. And then they killed him in Dallas. And as soon as the word went out that they were looking for Lee Harvey Oswald as a suspect in that killing, which, happened basically within an hour of the killing. They were all after this guy, Lee Harvey Oswald. And everybody who heard that, who knew about the S-Force, realized that it was the S-Force that had killed the president, because Lee Harvey Oswald is the man that the S-Force was setting up to take the fall for killing Castro. And what they had done is they had just done a complete 180 and had set him up. And DeMore and Shield got him the job at the Texas Book Depository, and they set him up for taking a fall for killing the president. And Tippit was supposed to kill him. The police officer from the Dallas Police Department was sent to find him and to kill him. And so as soon as Oswald saw him, of course, he knew exactly what he'd come for, and so Oswald killed him, shot him dead right in the street. And so this series, this is what happened, of course, and then as soon as everybody realized that it had been the S-Force that had killed the president, everybody began to cover it up. Everybody began to conceal it, to conceal the existence of the team, to conceal the fact that they were in the field to try to kill Castro. And in fact, it became the paramount thing to have to conceal. So, because what they argued to Chief Justice Warren in order to get him to chair the Warren Commission. They said, look, we've got to tell you something very secret. And this was Sheridan told him again. He said, look, the fact is, he said, there was an assassination team in the field to kill Castro. And if that ever gets out, the American people are going to think that Castro found out about this and therefore retaliated against the president, and it must have been Castro that that killed him. And they'll insist that we invade Cuba. And if we invade Cuba, the Soviet Union is going to attack us, and we're going to have a third world war, and we're going to destroy the whole world. And this is how they designed the conspiracy theory, the cover-up theory, to get somebody of the caliber of Warren to come in to conceal it. They met with Gerald Ford and told Gerald Ford about this, and the one thing that had to be concealed during the entire Warren Commission investigation was the existence of this particular assassination team that was in the field to kill Castro. And it turns out, of course, that's the exact team that killed the president. And that was how the whole thing got concealed. And it becomes very important when you understand that it was Rip Robertson that was the head of the team that was on the boat that night, on the